As Abigail has explained, she has set the scene, and you have used the Church's guide to help us prepare for this evening. And I'm going to invite our first speaker, Dr. Shane Duffy. Dr. Shane Duffy is a highly regarded consultant obstetrician and gynecologist working in London with over 20 years' experience. He's also heavily involved in the Global Health Charity and worked through MedNav, a life-saving initiative with the goal of making childbirth safe for women around the world. He's a visiting volunteer, fistula surgeon at the Kitovu Hospital in Uganda, where he and his team have provided surgery for patients with an obstetric fistula for the last 21 years. You're very welcome, Shane. And just before you start, I'm going to play a short clip from a little video that was produced by the BBC, which is where we heard about some of your work. So if you bear with me a second, I'm just going to share this small little clip, and then we'll come back to you and we'll allow you to take over there. So just give me 1 second now while I make these slight arrangements. And I'm hoping now you'll be able to see and hear.
Here in rural central Uganda, the nearest hospital is around 2 hours away. That's partly why most women in this community give birth at home, and some lose their babies as a result.
And this is your brother?
Yes. Like Selena, she was 16 when she went into labour here. After 3 days, she was finally taken to hospital. She gave birth to a little girl who died soon after delivery. Selena tells me she was cursed, and that's why her baby died. The obstructed delivery also caused a rupture in Selena's bladder, making her leak urine constantly, a condition known as obstetric fistula. 200,000 women suffer with the condition in Uganda alone. For some, their bowels are affected too, making them doubly incontinent.
She has got a fistula, she has got a hole in her bladder.
Now, a rare opportunity to repair the damage. For 2 weeks, doctors from Britain are providing free fistula surgery at Kitovu Hospital. It usually costs $700.
Yes, how are you? I'm fine. Yes. You well? Yes.
I was very lively before. Now I can't mix with people. When I pass someone, they tell me I stink. Even when I take a bath, the smell doesn't leave me, so I just stay at home.
To raise awareness, the missionaries who run the hospital travel to villages and talk about family planning and giving birth safely. Most of the women here today will have given birth at home with a traditional birthing attendant. These are generally older women who have little or no medical experience. What the doctor is telling the community here to do instead is to save enough money to get the woman to hospital so she can give birth safely. She says that could be the difference between life and death for the woman and her unborn child.
You all right? Okay, let's go through.
The morning of Selena's surgery, and she's nervous.
You can see the ureteric fistula.
This is complex surgery. The hope is Dr. Duffy and his team will train Ugandan doctors here so they can eventually take over.
We do 4 camps a year. We have a local surgeon here at Kitovu who actually is able to do the simple VVFs, the simple fistulas. So she's starting to take them on, but unfortunately not as much surgery happens after we've gone as we'd like.
Selena's operation has been a success. After a short recovery time, her mother hopes she can go back to school and get her life back. But many more women are left waiting, facing a lifetime of rejection, shame and humiliation. Tulip Mazumdar, BBC News, Masaka.
That sets the scene very much for us, Shane. Shane, you have the floor. So if you have slides you'd like to share, feel free to begin.
Great. Many thanks, Brian, and thank you to all for inviting me to give a brief outline of my work with fistula patients. And I hope I'm not too technical. I hope that people will find that the bits that I say aren't too confusing. But so I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist that's based at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital in London. And I've been a visiting fistula surgeon at Kitovu Hospital in Uganda and I'm delighted to be invited to talk with you about my experience to date. In 2002, I worked in a rural part of Ethiopia as a general tropical doctor, and met some very inspirational people then, John Kelly, who many will know from here, and Catherine Hamlin, who founded the Fistula Hospital in Addis Ababa, and I did my first fistula repair with her. And for the last 21 years, I've been helping patients with urinary and fecal incontinence in Uganda, initially with the MMMs and now with the sisters, the local Ugandan sisters. Uganda is a beautiful country, but it's got many challenges. And I've been asked to tell you a little bit about the work that we do. Since 2004 up until now, we've repaired over 9,000 fistulas, and we've trained 44 local Ugandan surgeons, which I feel particularly positive about. And this is an example of the Fistula Ward. This was set up by Africara Aid many years ago, and it's the well kept, and it's the pride of the hospital. And this is a picture of the kind of area that the patients go to after having the fistula repair. I know there was the launch of the Safe Birth for All, and many will be aware that the risk of pregnancy is a risky business. It's an unpredictable journey. And in the first and second part of the pregnancy, it's generally safe. However, the greatest time of risk tends to be during birth and for the first day or two following birth. And with that in mind, I'm delighted that there's the launch of the Safe Birth for All, because pregnancy is, as I said, unpredictable, and the time of birth is an area that we need to focus in and manage a little bit better. And throughout the world, unfortunately, there are many challenges, and some people on the call today will recognize their own countries here in Sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, East Africa, and indeed South Africa. The risk of death during childbirth is very high. In Asia, there's also significant risk. And in the northern countries, it does exist, but to a much lesser degree. And this picture I took from the hospital in Uganda, where it shows the reality of the life in resource-poor settings. Unfortunately, death is a part of life and pregnancy, indeed. And I can't imagine a sign like this outside my hospital here in London. But as I said, unfortunately, in many parts of the world, there are many challenges that need to be addressed. In terms of, sorry, I might have stalled. Let me see if I can unstall. Don't know why it's done that. Sorry. Can you hear me, Brian?
I can hear you. Maybe just unshare your screen and then try and reshare your screen.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's not letting me do anything. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So perineal trauma, which is essentially an injury to the lower genital tract, it happens very regularly in normal deliveries, and it's of no significance. It can be sorted out by normal suturing. And there can be severe injury in some patients where they get an injury to the back passage and the bladder can be affected. And this is a normal part of giving birth. It's a challenging, as I said, unpredictable event. And when a baby descends into the pelvic cavity, you can see here it pushes on the different structures. And in about 6% of all labors, the baby can be obstructed, so the labor can be obstructed. And with this obstruction, you get pressure developing on the front part, which is where the arrow shows now, but also on the back part. And if this pressure is unrelieved, you can end up with holes. And this is a diagram of where the holes happen, where the red areas are. You can have holes essentially at the junction of the bladder and the bladder neck. And sometimes you can also have holes in the back passage of the vagina. So that can give rise to urinary incontinence and fecal incontinence. And in terms of how this affects people and their lives, I think it's best said by the patients that have experienced it. And I'm just going to give you a short clip now of a patient and her experience. I hope it comes across on the webinar.
But I pushed for long, about 9 hours. Push. The nurse was telling me, push. And I pushed for very long. So after that, the urine started dropping. The doctor checked me and told me, you have a problem of fistula. He told me that go to Kitovu, they will help you. From the hospital, telling me that I have to go to Kitovu and operating me. I waited for about 2 months. If I couldn't get this operation, I could lose my job, my husband.
Right. So I think you got a sense of the frustration that things can escalate. And this was a quote by the Pulitzer Prize winner Nicholas Kristof, who said, just about the worst thing that can happen to a woman in this world is to develop an obstetric fistula that leaves her trickling body waste and shunned by everyone around her. And this is an example of the daily reality of the leaking that happens, which is uncontrollable. And unfortunately, in many parts of the world, fistula is a reality of life. And in 2006, the World Health Organization estimated that over 2 million women throughout the world have an untreated fistula. And between 50 and 100,000 new cases happen per year. And a meta-analysis in 2012 reported that the incidence of fistula was 9 per 100,000 live births. So it's quite a prevalent thing, and I appreciate it's not the sort of thing that people will talk about. And I suppose that's why it's nice that we're able to shine a light on it today. And the reason these things happen is because of something called the 3 delay model. So first of all, patients don't understand that they needed to seek care earlier. They leave it too late. And then when they do decide they want to receive care, they then can't make it to the medical facility on time. And then when they do turn up to the medical facility, they don't receive adequate or appropriate treatment, or there's not skilled surgeons to be able to perform the surgery. And in Ethiopia, where I started this work initially, the lifetime prevalence of this happening was 1.1% of women in Ethiopia had an obstetric fistula, with only 1/3 ever being treated. And the irony of all of this is there's over 2 million patients, but only 15,000 patients have surgery each year worldwide, which is completely inadequate. The cost of the repair is not an awful lot. It is a lot, I suppose, for the patients who are experiencing it, $100 to $400 US. And I thought, I appreciate, we don't have much time to go into too much detail today, but there's no doubt that a paradigm shift is needed in the obstetric fistula management. We've done our bit in terms of trying to improve the care. In a small area in Uganda, we've developed patient pathways, education programs, social reintegration programs, and we're happy with the care that we provide in one area. But there's no doubt that worldwide things need to improve, and we've published different articles trying to get the world to listen to how we can do this. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to have been able to present to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, definitely. Thank you very much indeed. There was an awful lot in what you said there. And I suppose one thing that you mentioned a couple of times is the fact that we're intending to shine a particular light on a subject that not too many people know a lot about, but also on a subject that really deserves attention, which began last week with the Safe Birth for All, where Tony Pike, who will speak next, was involved in the organisation of that. So Shane, thank you very much indeed. And just to mention too that if anybody has any questions or comments or queries, feel free to drop them into the chat and we will definitely come to them towards the end. And to say too that this will be recorded and you will get a recording of this afterwards also.